Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers Reviews morning briefing on Monday. What date is it, Chris? 5th of February. There we go. I have no idea off the top of my head. Myself, there we go. Myself and Chris Jack here to talk through all the latest Rangers news, to look back at Rangers 3, Livingston. No Derek Clark this week. He is away in the Arctic Circle of all places, so he's quite literally in the cryo chamber. Chris, I know we make that joke far too often. Before we get into it, remember this podcast is brought to you by MPH Group over there. All the details. If you want to do a bit of home renovation, are in the description. You can also win a free holiday, 7-day holiday to Mexico. So if you want to do it, as I say, any home improvements, MPH, our friends who bring you this podcast, are the people to go to. Chris, was it finally a quiet Sunday after us saying throughout January you were going to have a quiet Sunday and nothing of the sort happened?
I think it was fairly quiet. Didn't have to write any words, didn't have to make any phone calls, and Rangers Twitter seemed to be in a fairly good mood. So it's always nice. You always feel your mood is sometimes reflective of the social media intake that you take in. But I think it's safe to say since full time on Friday, everyone has been in fairly good spirit. So that's kind of fed into my weekend, and we're straight back into it today. I've got a meeting this morning, and then it's press conference time later on ahead of the game tomorrow. Straight into that one on Tuesday night, and then also build up back into Scottish Cup action. So we're very much back into this hectic schedule. A lot of big games, but a lot of opportunities coming up for Rangers as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. We're going to talk through Fabio Silva. Chris, want to talk about Todd Cantwell, who had some interesting comments this morning, set pieces, Rabbi Matondo. As ever, folks, get your comments in. A lot of good mornings, a lot of happy people after the weekend, Chris, and you can understand why. It was a good weekend for Rangers. There's not been many weekends in the last couple of seasons where the direct rival Celtic have dropped points in the league and Rangers have managed to capitalise upon it. Maybe a little bit of an extra element to the home atmosphere as well on Saturday, Chris. With that in mind, you can't, I said at the start of my colour piece yesterday, you cannot ignore the optics whatsoever in the Old Firm title race. And the Rangers simply had to go and capitalise, and they did, very convincing. I don't think Livingston didn't have a shot on target. I can't remember them getting into the Rangers box. They're obviously out of form, but it was as one-sided a game, as you'll see. We'll get into all that in the talking points, Chris. But I guess just generally the weekend overall for Rangers, after what had been, I think in isolation it had been a good enough transfer window, but there's still question marks coming out of it. I think still frustration at maybe the state of the squad and the fact that, as we spoke about after the game, Klopp and Clement still somewhat playing a catch-up on it. But it was a good weekend for Rangers, and it feels like at the moment speaking, obviously a big game against Aberdeen tomorrow, but they've got a bit of momentum behind them, which again felt very far away when Clement arrived a few months ago.
I know it's going to be a theme, I think, from the manager of this. We only focus on ourselves, don't look at the league table. It's all about picking up our own results, our own performances. But if you're in a title race, you can't ignore what's happening elsewhere. That might not be the main focus for the manager. He said post-match at the weekend, there's no talk of any other teams within the Rangers camp. That's all fine. But if you're going for a title and there's only two horses in the race, you need to know what the other one is, what the other one's doing. So I think the momentum is certainly with Rangers right now. There's a feel-good factor with Rangers right now. Since the manager came in, I think, as we mentioned post-match, it's not been perfect. There's frustration over the Aberdeen game. Old Firm game was probably one that got away, but you then had injury circumstances. But there's been so many, on the flip side of that, so many positives, so many big performances, so many big results, individuals improving, the collective has markedly and remarkably almost. Overall, I think it was a good transfer window as well. So for me, there's a lot of positives there for Rangers. It's going to be, how do they react in adversity? Now, the manager has spoken about this. He's warned of this. It's going to be once the wheels come off for an afternoon and you don't get the result, do you slip up at Ibrox? Do you have a tricky away day? It's going to happen. Rangers won't win every game between now and the end of the season. If they can, brilliant. If they do, great. But unfortunately, I don't think it will happen. It's then about everyone just keeping their cool, remembering that these things happening title races. It's been a long time since Rangers have actually been in a proper title race going down the stretch, because Celtic have won the last couple because Rangers have basically self-combusted. The 55 season, Rangers were that far ahead. It wasn't a title race after the new year, even long before that. So it's been a long time where it's been really tight going into the last few weeks of the season, and been a long time since Rangers were ahead going into that period. That's the situation that they've now got themselves into. That's the chance they've given themselves, potentially being ahead. That then adds a different dynamic, it adds a different pressure. But that's the same on the other side of it as well. The dynamic has shifted. Dynamic has shifted at Celtic as well. And while Celtic will say they only focus on themselves, and Rangers say the same thing, you can't ignore how both camps are doing it, and you can't ignore the respective mood on both sides of the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Let's talk about Fabio Silva, Chris. Let's get right into it. A lot of comments about him. Denzel said, I like the work rate and sheer talent on display from Silva. He's a type of player you don't see often in our league these days. John Scott Ranger, who I concur with this comment, John says, let's have no more nonsense about not having signed a number 9. And Matthew saying, Silva had some great link-up play. He made some nice passes. I've not seen a number 9 make them for a while. For context, Chris, we said a few times in the final days of the transfer window, and listen, everyone wants transfer deadline day signs because it's exciting and it's fun, but they rarely happen these days, or they rarely come out of the blue. Obviously, a couple of years ago, it happened with Rangers in January with Aaron Ramsey, but aside from that, there's not been many of these kind of transfers that have come completely out of the blue. Fabio Silva, and we spoke about the fact that, look, if Rangers had signed Fabio Silva on the 30th of January instead of the 30th of December, would the mood have been different? A lot has been made of his interview, where I believe he said, it's something like he said he's not an out-and-out goal scorer, and he said, speaking to a few of us out in La Manga, kind of describing his game, and he explicitly said, look, he's maybe not a conventional number 9. But I think the conversation has went too far the other way, and forgetting that this is someone who had 2 good loan spells last season. I think scored 16 goals against Belgium and across the Belgian and Holland Dutch leagues. Were Rangers going to go and spend all that money on Lawrence Shankland in this window, when you look, as Clement said, at I guess just the sheer wage bill they have of strikers who are 26 and over in the forward positions, especially when they spend so much money in the summer. And then Fabio Silva, okay, is a particular type of number 9, but he's still a number 9. Yeah, at times I think he'll play off a striker. At times he could play in that number 10 position. At times he could play off one of the sides. And it is only one game, Chris, but we'll get into his performance. But that wasn't a performance that screamed out to me, this is a player who looks uncomfortable up there at all. I think, as the comments say, he linked play at some moments. He played on the shoulder as well, scored what is a poacher's goal from a decent opportunity, but not a clear-cut opportunity. There's a lot of players in his way. Almost scored an acrobatic effort and had that one he put over the bar as well. I mean, as far as a first start in the league at Ibrox goes, I think that was a pretty good impression. And yes, I think there's still questions of overall, do Rangers have enough goals in that front six, and that will, I think that'll be the conversation topic until Rangers go and win an Old Firm game again, as we've spoken about repeatedly. When they've not won a meaningful game in that fixture for so long, there's going to be that focus. But just on Silva in isolation, I thought he was impressive. What do you think about his performance overall?
I thought he was good. I thought it was one of these afternoons where he did everything that he had to do. As you say, I thought he liked to play well. I thought his work rate was there. There was a number of nice wee touches and flicks, and you could see his vision, you could see his movement, and most importantly, he got a goal. Because all of that, as impressive as all of that was, if he comes away and he doesn't score, people say he's not a number 9. He's not going to score the goals. We're not going to win the league. I think people are getting too worked up on this number 9 issue. The manager was clear when Silva came in. This is the role he's going to play. He's going to play through the middle, and he backed him to go and score goals. Now, I've said throughout the window, said on the transfer show we did the other night there, I would have liked to have seen another striker coming in. Not because I don't think Fabio Silva is a good player, not because I don't believe that he will score a good level of goals for Rangers. It's just an injury thing for me. Now, if you go and lose one, you're then down 2-1. The way that the schedule is for Rangers now, a lot of games, a lot of busy weeks coming up. If you lose someone for a fortnight, you can miss 4 big games. And Rangers can't really afford to be losing guys for that number of games now. So that was my wish for another striker to come in, was more from a bodies perspective. I think we can all but write off Danilo until the end of the season if he's back before the last couple of weeks. That's kind of where the manager seems to be pointing people in that direction. Roof, who knows? He said he will be back, but there's no time scale on it. Can't be relied on. So it's going to be Dessers. It's going to be Silva. I think they've both got goals in them. Importantly, I think we need to see goals from other areas of the side. Well, we know what Tav can do. You're looking for McCausland to chip in. We're looking for Cortez to chip in. Someone has to replace the contribution of Abdallah Sima. So is that Matondo being a bit more involved? Is there goals from midfield? Cantwell's got a couple now. You're looking at Lundstrom, Diomande perhaps. It's not a case of Rangers signing number 9, they win the league. They don't, then they won't. I think that's been far too simplistic. Ultimately, Silva is a good player who has made the team better, who will contribute over the course of the season. And how you define him, whatever tag you want to give him, the more good players you have in your side, the more chance you've got of being successful. And he's certainly a good player. For me, he gets the nod on Tuesday night, and you wouldn't back against him and go and get another goal against Aberdeen.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of appreciation for Silva in the comments. I'll get to some of it now. Francis saying, Silva looked good. We are starting to see glimpses of why Wolves paid as much as they did for him. Is he in the European squad? Aldo saying, I believe he will be, Francis. Don't know if that's actually been publicly announced, Chris, has it? But I thought it was going to be last week, but I believe he will be in the European squad. Aldo says Silva showed enough on Saturday. He can lead the line, gave the midfield confidence, and it showed in the constant attacks. And David saying he looked good against the low block opposition. I asked Clement about him after, and I think in keeping with Clement's character, there was a couple of compliments and a lot more room for improvement, as you would expect and as you would hope. It was fitting, obviously, that Dessers then came on and missed his kind of good opportunity. Obviously, Rangers can't have two strikers in form at the same time. You mentioned Todd Cantwell there, Chris. He has 3 goals in his last 4 games. He was criticised heavily for his performance in the Old Firm game, but I think he's responded well to that. Obviously, scored away at Hibs. He scored a home to Kilmarnock. I thought that goal in the second half, and we'll get on to Rabbi Matondo as well, but I thought that goal was exactly what you want from him, because his quality for me as a footballer, Cantwell, is the way that he kind of receives the ball under pressure. I think he spoke about it before, how he bases his touches off the opposition. You saw that in the I think the lead up to the chance or the breakaway chance where Matondo kind of slowed it down, where Silva and Cantwell linked up nicely. I think you'd be more confident, or Cantwell would rather be in a situation where he's under pressure in the middle than if he's isolated out wide one-on-one, because he's not like a powerful, explosive dribbler out wide. He's a really clever player in the middle. And he was speaking to some of the papers after the game. I'll just read his quotes, Chris, because I thought they were quite interesting. He said, I'm playing centrally as number 10 now, and I'm getting the numbers I think I can. The manager knows my best position. His words to me were, when I first came in, we had a few injuries and we had a few complications in a sense. I'm now playing in a position I think I'm showing is my best. I'm thankful to the manager for giving me that game time. What's clear is I'm playing as a different number 10 than I was before. It's a different style, a different way of playing. You can see that I'm not being asked to play the way I was last season. I see a lot of comments, Todd's not getting involved, Todd's not doing this, but I'm being asked to play differently, and it is working. The numbers are coming through. I'm enjoying myself, so let's just enjoy it. What do you make of those comments, Chris? Because I think that I've actually been meaning to do a bit of a piece on this, but there's just no time in the weeks at the moment. If you look at the way that the Clement side play, especially I think when they are space behind the opposition, they're trying to turn them quite quickly. You see that with McCausland's runs in behind. If you watch Rangers from kickoff, you'll see that instead of moving towards the ball, as Cantwell might have done under Beale or other managers, the instruction is to, I think, attack in behind more, make more vertical runs. You saw it with Desser's goal at St Mirren. There's just generally more forward runs in behind the opposition defence, more verticality. What Clement, I think, spoke about early on. Do you think there's been enough of a focus on the I guess, change in role for Cantwell, Chris? And how do you think he's done overall? Because that is 3 goals in 4 games. I know he did the celebration of blocking it in the noise, whatever that is. As we spoke about after the game, I'm sure people won't mind that if he continues to put in these performances. And he's another player that seems to be in a good vein of form at the moment.
Ultimately, he's going to be judged more harshly on the Old Firm game. People will say, well, it's Livingston at Ibrox, he should be playing well, he should be scoring goals. I don't think people will forget the Old Firm performance, and that's not an Old Firm performance in isolation, unfortunately. I think in certain games we do still need to see more of Cantwell. But I think, as I said in that interview with the Daily Boys on Saturday, and it's out this morning, it has taken a bit of time, I think, to get back up to speed. I think it's easy to forget he did spend a long time out injured. He's very much a rhythm player, and it takes a bit of time for that rhythm to be re-established. He's clearly got talent. He's clearly got he's got a vision. He's got a finish. He's got a pass that makes Rangers a better side when he produces it. Can he produce it often enough? Can he produce it in Old Firm games? Can he produce it in cup finals, big European games? Ultimately, that will determine whether he is a successful Rangers player or just an okay Rangers player. But I think the form that he's in, it's certainly more like it. I think we said post-match, that's the type of goal he should be scoring more often. It's receiving the ball, it's making a pass, it's then drifting into space. He's not being tracked, his movement's good, and he finds himself in the right place at the right time, finishes it well. And if you're a number 10 at Rangers, you should be chipping in with that type of goal, with that type of finish. I thought the partnership between him and Silva could be a really interesting one for Rangers. Both also two technical players, might find themselves in the same areas of the pitch at times, but I think they can then combine well in those tight spaces, perhaps open up spaces elsewhere. I thought that move that you referenced with Matondo earlier on, that could have been a really, really nice goal from Rangers.
Yeah.
It's a lovely flick. Cantwell makes the right choice. Silva shows his class, and ultimately Matondo dilly-dallies on it and runs into an alley, and the chance is gone. On another day, that ends up in the back of the net, and we're all saying, "No, what a move!" No, it's exactly what you want to see from Silva. It's exactly what you want to see from Cantwell. So I think that partnership, that relationship could be a really interesting one going forward for Rangers. Ultimately, I think Todd said himself that there's a lot of talk about him. Some of that perhaps brings on himself with the celebration, with some of the social media stuff, both of which I don't mind. I know other people do mind it and they'd rather he didn't, but that's Todd Cantwell. If you have at your club, you have to accept that. So I don't mind either of those aspects. As long as he's performing right now, he's performing. If he can continue this and even step it up a level again, that's the Rangers then have a really influential player on their hands.
He did say as well that people may be forgetting he'd been out for 2 months, had that injury at the start of the season. I think he wasn't helped by the amount of different positions he had to play at the start of the season, Chris, but hopefully can continue that form, as you say. A few contrasting comments. Timothy says Cantwell needs to show it in the big games, not just against Livy. Let's hope he shows his quality tomorrow night. In contrast, comment here saying Cantwell is 4-6 and arguably his best performance of the season. Yes, it was Livy, but he's going about his job, much less showboating or getting involved in silly confrontations. And John says Silva and Cantwell linking up well. I agree with you, Chris. I think Cantwell, footballers often, their playing style, I think, reflects their personality and who they are. And I remember doing a piece with one of Cantwell's coaches when he was a young player, and he said he's always been that kind of maverick figure who is himself and he plays like that. And I think that's why people took to him so quickly. That is the next stage then when you've initially, I guess, got the appreciation of the support. It's always going to be those big games. And I thought in the League Cup final, actually, in the second half, Chris, he came onto a game. Again, so much, I think, at the moment naturally hinges on Rangers winning those meaningful Old Firm fixtures because it's been too long since they've not. You spoke there about Rabbi Matondo, Chris, so let's move on to him. A good goal. I thought his press conference was actually quite interesting after the game when he was speaking about Clement's man management, how he's gathered the whole squad and got them all going in the same direction. Matondo, I guess, I know he's playing a lot now, but he wasn't really before Christmas. It's interesting that you referenced that move, Chris, because I think what Matondo's needed to do against teams who sit in is at times not rush things. If you look at the best wingers in the world, they don't take their men on 25 times a game. They might get the ball 30 times a game and 20 times they're trying to retain it. At times you've got to take a risk. And I actually thought that although his end product may be frustrated at points, number one, it's difficult because You've got about 20 Livingston players crowding that box. It was very deep. Number two, I don't think he was always helped by Barisic, because if you looked at, I think Matondo was sometimes moving a bit deep. Sometimes it wasn't helped by where Barisic was, because he wasn't really creating space for him, and his receiving position was difficult. He wasn't always receiving, then able to go on the front foot. But because he varied his game, and listen, I'm not saying he had a perfect game, but because he varied it and he didn't always try to cut inside on his right foot, which we have seen in the past, and he did try to go to the byline. If you watch that goal, I can't remember who his direct marker is and the man behind him, but the second Livingston player, instead of trying to close the space on the inside where the shot comes from, he thinks, oh, he's going to go down the line. The point being that I think there is development in his game under Clement, still long-term questions. Obviously, there's still stuff to improve, but a good finish, even if he did slow it down in the wrong moment for that transition chance. And look, he won a penalty against Dumbarton, wasn't it? Created the goal for Dessers against Hibs, scored yesterday. So quietly, he's maybe starting to find a little bit of form under Clement too, even if he's a type of winger who is going to frustrate home fans at points. What do you make of his kind of performance overall?
I think frustrate is the word. It's a word we've used quite a lot with him, and no doubt we will do again over the course of the season. I think he's perhaps one of these guys. Some people made their mind up early on that he was no use, he was no good, and they wanted rid of him. And he's now having to work his way back from that. And sometimes that can actually be quite a long, arduous journey. And once people have written you off and they say you're a waste of money, it takes a long time and a lot of consistent, high quality performances to get yourself back into a place where people say, well, actually, he's not as bad as we think. I think I said off enough last season, said at the start of the season, I remain to be convinced, and he's still got a lot of convincing for me to do, that he's going to be a regular starter in a really successful Rangers side. That's not to say, though, that he can't play a part in a team that is now very much in a title race. I think for a lot of his Rangers career, he's not looked like it. He went through that purple patch at the start of the season, great goal against PSV, and a couple after that. I thought, no, there's actually something here. I thought his finishes around about that time were a bit more composed. He didn't look as rushed, didn't look as flustered when he actually looked up and saw the goal. And there's definitely things there that the manager can work on. I think there's things that he has improved on, as you say. That variation in his game, I think, is going to be important, because we know what his main strength is. He's quick. Now, he can cover a lot of ground in a short space of time. But that doesn't mean to say that he just has to use that skill all the time. That's not to say pick the ball up in the halfway line and just running straight lines down the touchline. People are going to figure that out very, very quickly. And I think we mentioned it post-match on Saturday. After he scored the goal, the manager almost looked at him as if to say, "Well, see, that's what you can do."
Yeah.
That's one of the things you've got in your locker. Yes, you can go down the line, but if you come inside, you can get your shot away. And it's about, as you say, I think it's about mixing it up. We know, obviously, we see him being out for another 10 weeks or so, maybe. He's got there's a lot of pressure on Matondo. There's Cortes has come in. I thought he looked really bright at the weekend. In time, Cortes may well take over that left-hand slot. I think having the two of them, having another option there is certainly beneficial to Rangers, because they did need reinforcement. And if Cortes can play both sides, benefits Matondo, keeps him sharp, benefits Ross McCausland on the other side. So I think there's definitely a role to play for Matondo. It's a big opportunity for him now to one, be part of a successful Rangers side, and two, actually win people back over. There will still be big doubters within the support. But I see he's got a huge chance over these next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. A few comments saying, look, wingers will always be frustrating. I think in that type of game that's true. And also, when we saw him at the start of the season, it was always into space, always attacking into space. You think of the St Johnstone away goal, obviously PSV up at Ross County, he came on and had a good impact at home against Livingston when Rangers, the last time they played in the league, when it was 4-0, but it was only 1-0 by the 70th minute or something like that. So, yeah, interesting to see him in these type of games, because we've not seen him over a 10-game period on the left, again, just in kind of run-of-the-mill games consistently. I think we saw how that benefited Ruud van Yilmaz. I agree with you, Chris. I think there's elements to his game, and his final ball and decision-making at points lets him down, but clearly someone who Clement is going to have to rely on. So let's see how he goes over the next few days. Before we just touch upon final points in Aberdeen tomorrow, Chris, set pieces, Rangers have not been good enough. I just think blanket, they've not been good enough at them this season. Last season, when Michael Beale came in, I think it was actually one of the areas where we did see a quite dramatic and quick upturn. For those who like expected goals, Rangers created double their average expected goals from set pieces on Saturday compared to the rest of the league season. 0.82 expected goals. Obviously, it's what creates the opener, where we know how important set pieces can be in these types of games, Chris, where, listen, it's difficult games. You can say Livingston are out of form, and Rangers rotated their team. I don't think that was a team that had lots of specialist kind of profiles to break down a low block, but when any team is camped around their penalty box, it's difficult to create space. You're always thinking, I'd guess, what is the benefit of taking a risk here and trying to, as Matondo did for that shot, trying to create an opening, but then you want to retain the ball as well and not release the pressure. So it's a difficult balance, and set pieces, as a result, I think, become all the more important. And to my eye, having not watched them back much yet, but just had a quick look, it did seem as though Rangers were a lot more dangerous from that, from those situations at the weekend. And that's something if they're going to have a successful season, they'll need to do that, because there's a reason all these clubs, especially down in the Premier League, have specific coaches try and make marginal gains in that area, because you can't get enough goals in a title race, Chris. And it was good to see Rangers open the scoring from a corner at the weekend.
Actually, quite ironic that the goal comes from a cross, because I thought there was times that Rangers actually put too many crosses in, and they're a bit aimless and not really going anywhere. And that type of thing perhaps it feeds into exactly what Livingston want you to do, not just Livy, but other teams that come and play in that style. If you're just going to get the ball wide and stick it in the box, it's very, very rare you're actually going to get a breakthrough from that. I thought I think Livy had a bit of a complaint over the manner of the goal, but it's good to see Rangers mixing it up from corners. I know it was something we spoke about pre-Dumbarton maybe, in terms of the style of corners and not actually getting any joy from them at all. Rangers do have guys who should be commanding in that other area. I think Goldson doesn't score enough goals from them. I like to see Suter being more effective. Balogun is certainly a guy you can rely on. Actually, I saw a couple of comments on Balogun earlier on.
Yeah.
We'll find out at the press conference later on how he is and how fit he is, and if he's going to wear a Danilo style mask to get himself back. But if he is in the side, he's someone who you would put your money on to be able to go and attack a proper corner and get on the end of it. So I think it's good to see Rangers clearly working on it, because on games like the weekend, as you say, it's a different source of attack. It's something where you should be able to work on, have a move, something straight off the training ground, as they say, and it just gives you a different angle of attack against teams who, if they're going to sit that deep and make it really, really difficult to play through, sometimes it does just take a set piece chance just to help break the deadlock. And in games like this, once Rangers get the first one, 9 times out of 10, you know exactly how the rest of the afternoon's going to go. It's about getting that first one. And you would like to see it come from neat passes of play, or a bit of interchanging, or a moment of class from someone. See if it comes from a corner being swung in and somebody getting on the end of it. Ultimately, a goal's a goal, and if it helps win points, then our beggars can't be choosers.
And I think we do have a bit of an idealised view of what breaking down the low block actually means. But if you want, in any team where it's, I don't know, Arsenal recently down south, I can't remember which game it was, their first 2 games against a team sitting deep were set pieces, and so often it's just when you get that sighting of space like that Silva and Cantwell moment, because you need space to score, and then it opens the game up, as you say, Chris, as well. Press conferences today, so we're going to let you get up the road. Final comment is from Bob. What about Yilmaz's effort? The boys starting to come to the boil. I don't know if you saw the social media clip. He was insistent on his life that it was a shot. Are you having that, Chris, to close off our Monday briefing?
I wouldn't want to call Ridvan's chain of events into question. I've never actually spoken to him, so I don't want to make my first conversation with him me calling him a liar and saying that he's at it. So I'm happy to give him the benefit of the doubt. If it's found the top corner, then it would have been celebrated regardless of what it was. But I thought it was actually quite an interesting clip, not just because of obviously a reference to that point. One of these wee things that shows you a wee bit behind the scenes, shows you a wee bit of the team spirit that's perhaps been built in the squad. And I thought it was an interesting clip. If he's that adamant, then who am I to say otherwise?
Yeah, it was interesting last week as well. Clement saying that there was players who had an opportunity to leave the club, but they came to him and said they wanted to stay. And I just wonder if that applied to Ridvan, who's in a good moment at the moment. And very finally as well, a big shout out to the Rangers women. Another fantastic result, 9-0, I believe it finished. Joe Potter's side continued to be absolutely emphatic this season, so a good result for them as well yesterday. Right, Chris, you're going to go up to the press conference. If you want to get more from Chris and I today, if you've seen enough of us, no problem at all. That's totally fine. But we'll be speaking after the press conference on the YouTube member section. If you want to join that, you just go to the homepage and click join. You get 3 to 5 extra videos a week, press conference reactions, some extra stat stuff, Derek's Q&As. I'll be on with Adam Thornton later in the week as well to talk through some football tactics and stuff like that. You can join that on the homepage. We'll have full coverage of the press conferences, full transcripts as well, updates across all our social channels. So keep up to date with that. I'll be on with Stevie Clifford tomorrow morning, so look forward to that as well. Until then, thanks to Chris for joining me. Thanks to everyone for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the Rangers Review website by following the link in the comments, and we'll speak to you later. Bye for now.